Allegiance. Anyone who wishes to join us, please feel free. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah. Actually, yes, you. I have a clock that says that too, actually.
Oh my gosh, he's a minute early.
So glad to see everybody here tonight, including a couple of guests, our soon-to-be new members are joining us this evening as well. That's great. We can start with 24024, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's unanimous. Informational reports and presentations. Pleased to have the Regional Communications Operation here to let us know what's going on in the third and fourth quarter.
Well, that is for information only for the commissioners. We do have a presentation this evening as a follow-up to, I believe it was either June or July, we heard from the consultants who were spearheading the Lakes Region Homeless Study. And at that time, they still had a little bit more work to do on the study, and that work has come to a completion back in the 1st of October. And we have received the final report, and we have asked them to come and just kind of give us an overall synopsis of the final report. And so we have invited Jeff Levine of Levine Planning Strategies LLC to kind of give us an update on what this final report looks like for the Lakes Region Homeless.
Mr. Levine, would be pleased to hear from you.
Thanks. Is this on?
Might have to move the
Probably
button.
not. Who knows?
Sound like it.
It's on? Okay. I'm expecting it to be too loud. Great, thanks for having me here today. I'm here to present the sort of outline of the final report that we completed last month. So you may remember, a group of us came in July, the sub-consultants I was working with, and we talked a little bit about profiles of the communities in the Lakes region and then the work that had been done with focus groups and meeting with various interested parties in the region to talk about the needs. And at the time, it had gotten to the point of recommending what the general needs were for homeless services in the area. And okay, and now we actually have gone to the next step where we have some potential sites for service centers. This is obviously very preliminary work, but this was part of what we said we would provide. And obviously, there's no easy sites. Every site is complicated and difficult, but we outlined some recommendations, and then we do have some sort of general sense of what order of magnitude costs might be. Again, these are based on the recommendation of our sub-consultant. This isn't necessarily, this may vary depending on what actions the county commissioners and the county decides to take. But with that, let me just pause for 1 second. I guess I'll hook my computer up and go through a couple of slides. Keeping me on my toes here. Nope, that's all right. That's no problem. Let me just get this there, and if this works, oops, other side. Oh, now it's gone out that.
Yanked it out of the wall.
I did.
Yeah, Sandy, I'll climb on.
Oh, it's connected on this side.
Every meeting, the cord seems to get shorter.
That's right. There we go. And if it's on here, 1 second. There it's going. All right. Thanks very much. Thanks for bearing with us. So like I said, this is an overview of the report. I'm going to go back and go over the earlier section briefly and then focus on some of the new material as well. And then the whole report should be in your packet. So the background was a little over a year ago. We started this project to really evaluate the needs and options of provision of programs and services for people experiencing or at imminent risk of homelessness. And it's challenging in an area like the Lakes region where it's not as easy to determine who is either homeless or at risk of becoming homeless because there's a lot of people sleeping in places like barns and woods. So we tried our best to outline the data that we have and the needs that we have based on what we were able to gather. So the study area is here. It's these communities as we defined as the Lakes region. We could spend a lot of time defining the Lakes region, but for the purposes of this study, these are really the ones we focused on. Just to highlight that there's an awful lot of households in these areas that would not be able to buy a home in these areas today. This doesn't mean they're not able to afford the home they're in, but if they decided to move into the area today, the housing prices are much higher. At least 60% of the community, of each community, would not be able to afford the median home in that community today. So that's always sort of a disturbing leading indicator, and it's pretty consistent with most of the state. Some sense of the median home prices over the last 10 years, and not a big surprise to anybody, they're going up. And then for renters, looking at how much of the rent, how much the gross rent is as a percentage of renters' income. And the way you look at this generally is that it's supposed to be you're supposed to be spending 30% or less of your income on rent if you be able to afford your rental, and that's because that's generally an amount above which you find you're struggling to meet other needs in your life. It doesn't mean you won't be able to pay the rent, but it means you may have to sacrifice things you might otherwise want to get, like a newer car or newer clothing or having better food to eat. Things start to squeeze a little bit when you get above that. And in this chart by community, you can see in the light red and the dark red, those are the households that are spending more than 30% of their income on rent. So those aren't necessarily great signs. In some of these communities, it's very concerning, particularly sort of Standish and Naples, where it's well over half of the community renters. So then sort of combining that, the blue is the homeowners and the red is the renters. These are the severely burdened households, the ones that are actually spending more than half their household income on rent or mortgage payments. Again, a little different story in each community, but certainly just some challenges, and that's why we are seeing people who are either experiencing homelessness or close to it. Also zoning, in terms of why don't we just build more housing to solve this problem? That is an opportunity, but many of the zoning ordinances in these communities make it difficult to build housing, particularly at the scale that might be needed to really drive these costs down. We looked at the comprehensive plans for the communities, the ones that had them, and sort of identified the key goals for what they would like to do as part of their comprehensive plan work, just to outline what communities are focusing on in terms of needs. And then, like I said, we spent a lot of the time as part of the study working with a sub-consultant who did some focus groups and had lots of meetings in the Lakes region and tried to get some data on people experiencing homelessness. So they conducted 26 interviews, 29 listening sessions, 26 participants in key interviews, 29 people at listening sessions, and 17 people at the focus groups they held to get some feedback. They held 3 listening sessions, and they put out information on them to try to get as many people to come as possible. I think they'd wished a few more people had come, but they had a good cross-section of the community in each one, and they kept them relatively brief to try to encourage people to come and have them realize it wouldn't take an entire evening. They had 2 in-person focus groups as well, one in Naples and one in Bridgeton. And they, again, had a relatively short focus group where they invited specific people to come to get a good cross-section of representation. They also conducted interviews with key interested groups and parties, created sort of an organizational coding structure based on their practice and how they do this work, just to try to figure out what the key themes were in this region. So the findings, which is really the important part. They have findings on extent of homelessness, the populations facing homelessness, and factors contributing to that. The extent, it's very hard to get a very precise number because a lot of people are couch surfing or in garages. People may be moving in and out of the area. But certainly the estimate of at least 30 people experiencing homelessness in this area, probably higher. There are many people who think that's increasing. It was hard to get really good data on that. Again, because sometimes it's slightly invisible in a rural area like this. The populations, single adults who will often live in the woods are intense. Families may stay in their cars or campers or trailers or find friends or family to stay with. Generally, people who are either originally from the Lakes region or have a long history there. You didn't see a lot of people experiencing homelessness who were coming from elsewhere. And people who were attached to the area, they didn't want to leave. Their friends and family were there, that's home to them. They might be able to find a spot, say in the shelter in Portland, but that's not what they wanted to do. They want to stay in the Lakes region. Specific factors, and this isn't a big surprise. Number one, transportation in this area. The pricing of housing, lack of affordable housing that I mentioned earlier, a number of other factors that contribute to it. It's really not a one symptom thing, but really transportation and housing costs are probably the two highest issues, and then some barriers to staying housed as well. Number of great services in this area. You know, there's good infrastructure in the Lakes region as there is in the county in general. The question is how to sort of coordinate this to try to make sure that people don't end up experiencing homelessness, and that's a challenge. But I'm sure a lot more people would be experiencing homelessness were it not for these services. There's some barriers, you know, and the one that I would call out here is cell phone reception and service. You know, people who are out in the woods who rely on their cell phone for everything from internet to communicating with people sometimes have trouble with coverage. There isn't an easy fix to that, but just another thing to think about in terms of what you might provide at a service center. So the recommendation is to create a one-stop service center with shelter beds that would follow a service hub model, really looking at the proximity to the Lake Regional Explorer bus route to try to resolve some of these transportation issues, and 302, near existing services, and in a relatively central location in this region. Some considerations for longer-term stay, and again, this is based on the need. I understand that, you know, this may be more than is possible to be delivered, but identifying the key ideal sort of constitution of a longer-term stay facility, it would be able to accommodate pets, it would have separate spaces for single adults and families, locked storage space, showers, some day space, access to computers and TV, beds that have charging stations, laundry facilities, some food prep area. You know, the model that my subconsultant thought was really good was actually the new homeless service center in Portland. Again, nothing at that scale, but just the idea of what's provided in that new service center, they felt was fairly state-of-the-art and met these sort of needs that people are having. In terms of management, I'm recommending a community advisory board for any sort of service center to make sure that there's good coordination between different providers and the communities and neighbors, creating some sort of formal political connection between any facilities management and political leaders in the region, and then potentially mobile outreach as well, because again, transportation can be tough. So once you get to a center like this, you perhaps have some mobility options through the Lakes Region Explorer, but even getting to it might be challenging without some sort of shuttle or some sort of way to get people and their stuff to this location. And then in the longer term, looking at creating a bit more safe and affordable housing, some models that are outlined in the report that I won't go through in detail. If you're interested, you can read a couple of case studies in there that we talk about. And then getting better data. There's a lot of differing data about how many people are experiencing homelessness in the region, and that's partially because it's measured differently. And just because, you know, it's challenging. It's very challenging to identify when is somebody considered experiencing homelessness. It's not as simple as it might seem. Then also working with landlords, trying to get more landlords to accept things like vouchers and subsidies. Sometimes landlords are reluctant to. That can be understandable, but through some education and potentially some support programs, getting more landlords to accept these vouchers also might help getting people off the streets. So the new part of this study is really looking at siting analysis. If there is going to be a homeless service center of some sort, where might it be located in the study area? So we went back to the items, the sort of criteria and the amount of space it might need, and working with North Star Planning, who does a lot of spatial analysis and planning. That they're led by the former planning director of Wyndham, so they're pretty familiar with the Lakes region. We've identified potential sites. None of them are perfect. Some of them may or may not actually be available, but we really started with a first cut. We didn't go further than that because at this point it's really more of a question of what actions might happen next before it's worth picking a specific site and figuring out exactly how much everything might cost. But this is sort of a first blush at potential siting of a facility like this. So they came up with, I think it's 17 or 18 sites that are certainly big enough. That was the first screening, as are there sites with big enough space to do something like this. And then 2 or 3 other sites that maybe if there was a smaller facility might work as well. So you see in the yellow, the sites that are almost certainly big enough, and then in the magenta, potential smaller sites. And what I'll do now is I'll just walk through them by community, just to focus down a little bit. We did look at the zoning for all of these sites, and I think it's the simplest answer is that zoning is going to be tough for any of these sites for a service center. Having said that, some of these sites have zoning that's closer to be able to accommodate this sort of use than others. But until there's a sort of a better program figured out, for example, would it have overnight beds? Would it have kitchen facilities? It's a little hard to do too much of a zoning analysis, so we decided that we wouldn't go too far on this at this point. But we did do an initial screening of the zoning, and it's in the report. It outlines the existing zones these sites are in and what they generally do and don't allow. But like I said, I think the short story version of it is there would probably need to be some tweaks to zoning on most of these sites. Some would need more specific, more change than others. Starting in Bridgeton, we had these 5 sites that were larger, including the hospital, which actually has a lot of appeal as a site for a number of reasons, in part because it's a hospital and it has some services right on site. There's a land in back that could potentially sort of have a center. 15 Depot Street, the town of Bridgeton, that's where the community center is. There's already services there as well. It's right in the middle of town. A site that the school district owns on Skill and Circle. It's a little smaller. It's an unused building. Again, potentially could site something like this. It is part of a school campus, so that's something to think about. The use at Harmon Field in Bridgeton, again, there's a field there. It's not necessarily using all the space, but thinking about what else these sites are being used for. A private owner owns a site on Portland Road that's about 3 acres. I think there's actually 2 of them. They're undeveloped. We don't know for sure what the owner's plans are for them, but obviously those are in private hands right now, so that would be an additional sort of process. And then the smaller site where the Bridgeton Historical Society is right now, that's being used as a food pantry already. It's pretty small. It probably couldn't accommodate all these needs, but depending on what the additional uses were, it was worth flagging. A few sites in Naples, which is actually, sort of maybe not the choice we initially thought about because it's sort of in between two places where there's more opportunities, but there were some sites worth looking at on Roosevelt Trail and one just off of it. A private owner owns 31 acres on Roosevelt Trail that are currently undeveloped. There's another site that's 11 acres behind the fire department in Naples. And then there's a site on Lambs Mill Road that I think is right off of Roosevelt Trail. Norway Savings Bank owns it. Right now it's undeveloped, and we weren't quite sure whether it had been in foreclosure at some point or why the bank owned it, but that's who's listed as the current owner. So, sites in Wyndham. Wyndham has a lot of appeal in a number of ways because it's on the Lakes Explorer. There are services there, and then there's a number of sites that potentially could be used for a service center like this. A very large undeveloped site on Enterprise Drive, several hundred acres. A church building on Roosevelt Trail that has space in the back. Another privately owned site on Roosevelt Trail. A Catholic church site on Roosevelt Trail with additional land, I think, in the back as well. The Home Depot site, which has a lot of extra land behind it, but it is privately owned. A site on Sandbar Road, again, privately owned, currently undeveloped. Another privately owned site on Turning Leaf Drive, privately owned, currently undeveloped. Another site on Roosevelt Trail that has about 50 acres, again, private owner, currently undeveloped. And then a site on Gray Road that the town owns that's also currently undeveloped. And then a smaller site, I mentioned that there were some smaller sites. This is about 1 acre. This is where Wyndham has their social services and food pantry, so it seemed worth calling out. It's a little small, but there are similar uses already on that site. So thinking about sites that might be worth considering despite being a little smaller. It's also a little off of the transit line, but it's not too far off, so we do call it out. Finally, one site in Standish. This one's getting a little away from sort of the core area, but it seemed worth mentioning. It's a town office site. There's land behind the town offices in Standish. that we felt we'd be remiss about not flagging it as well. Again, potentially something like the Lakes Explorer could provide additional service. It's not that far away from the areas that we really were focused on. So the last thing we did, and this was a little challenging because we don't know what the program is exactly, and we wouldn't know when something might be constructed, but we did want to give a general sense of costs, because obviously that's a factor in thinking through any next steps. So a number of caveats here. Site control could really drive the costs if land is bought for this purpose versus whether it's already available. Looking at site preparation costs, depending on if there's regrading needed or environmental remediation. Construction costs, which as you all know have gone way up in the last few years. They seem to be calming down a little bit now, but trying to use current construction costs to give you a sense. The building design would obviously affect the price, the specific uses, whether there were soft costs related to entitlement or zoning or other soft costs as well. But we did try to sort of balance all those and outline in the report some of the assumptions we made. These are the assumptions we made. The land would basically be provided at minimal cost, so this is a baseline cost of using public land. New construction with minimal site prep costs. We assumed design for overnight accommodations for the purposes of pricing. We assumed about 15,000 square feet. This is based on potentially 30 beds. And a single-story building just to keep it inexpensive, which does also mean a slightly larger site might be needed. And then not a lot of additional significant costs for things like off-site improvements or other things that might be provided on site. So if you put all those cost estimates in, you'll get roughly a construction cost of between $6.5 and $8 million. And that's based on current construction costs, so obviously that will change. And that's very much an order of magnitude. And then there would be operating costs, of course. These things aren't free to operate. We would estimate an order of magnitude operation costs at about $1 million, with the understanding that some or a lot of that may come from existing services that are consolidated there. It may not all be new costs, but that would be sort of the overall costs once a center like this was created, in terms of keeping it open and functioning and safe and welcoming and, having time to address neighbors' concerns and all of those things. So just to outline the recommendations, I've gone through a lot of this already, but estimating about 30 people experiencing homelessness at a minimum, the challenges in a rural area, the fact that people want to stay, but they experience things like transportation challenges, good services in the area, a number of sites that theoretically could accommodate a service center, but they all have their challenges. And then just finally the recommendations that are in the report that I've pretty much just gone through in a couple of different sort of sections. Next steps would really be up to the county. We suggested discussing based on where we leave off this report, and I'll leave it to county staff and to the commission to think about what the best next steps might be for you at this point. This is the report that we're providing. I'm happy to answer any questions, but obviously it's not my decision what happens next with this process. And thanks very much. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Any questions? Neil?
We appreciate your organization's presentation and the thoroughness of it. I was curious, did you think in your study to take an existing building and renovate it? For example, in Portland, they took the basement of a church recently and created 24 beds. And they're overnight beds, it's not just day beds. So if our facility, or this facility is contemplating 30, but a cost of $6 to $7 million versus renovating in an existing building. Now, in the Lakes region, that type of facility might not be available, but clearly, was that an option that, did you look for any specific facility that might accommodate a renovation as opposed to a new build?
So we looked at a couple, the community center in Bridgeton that's already doing some services, a couple of the others that I mentioned. They are all definitely too small for something like this, so it's hard to get around some sort of new construction, but that might be a way to lower that cost if a site were identified, depending on how much work it needs. There aren't that many buildings that big in this region, but you never know. You can be optimistic.
And maybe a possibility would be to partner with somebody else, whether it's a church or a town, and build off an existing building.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea. That would be the best idea, because then you might not have to have all the from scratch construction costs.
Thank you.
Steve?
Jeff, thank you very much. One of the things I didn't hear, and maybe I missed it, was how did health issues come into this discussion or this determination of where people would be located and the problem of transportation, getting them to and from health advisors or health services?
Sure. So I think we understood that it would be hard to come up with a perfect solution. One of the things that's nice about, for example, the hospital site is the proximity to health services. Usually these sorts of facilities would offer some very limited health services where somebody would come in during the day and provide some basic services, but there would be transportation needs to health providers, and that would be part of that sort of overall operating cost of a facility like this.
And you feel like that's addressed in the report?
I think that it's addressed in the operation costs of a facility like this, getting transport to and from medical appointments, things like that. It's part of why it's a pretty big number.
Thank you.
Anyone else? It's a challenging process overall, I'll say that, and so we appreciate the report, for
Sure.
sure.
Well, thank you.
Thank
It's been,
you.
it's been
Thank you.
enjoyable. It's
Thank
been
you,
good
Jeff.
working with you.
Just to inform the commissioners of next steps with this, this is something that we don't want just sitting on the counter collecting dust. We're going to look at trying to create a meeting up in the Lakes region to present to the community up there, so that they're aware of the findings of this report. Also identifying partnerships. This is something that the county can't go into it by themselves. There are professionals in this field, there are agencies within the area that have more capability and understanding of what it takes than we do. And so identifying partnerships are very important. And next steps. We do have ARPA funds. The commissioners have already allocated ARPA funds, small amount, but enough to start implementing some of these recommendations. And so those are our next steps, and we're hoping to check some of those boxes in the next number of months to get the conversation moving on this.
Is there a possible participation by the Tedford House people in this particular approach?
Early on in the discussion, when we first had the money to do the study, we were very active in discussions with Tedford, and they were very interested. And at that time, they were supposed to really help out with the report itself, but they were going through some staffing changes, and so we needed to shift gears a little bit. But we're going to bring them back into the mix because they had some valuable experiences and resources.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea to me. Anything else? Again, thank you very much. So now, comments from the public. We would be glad to hear from anyone who wishes to spend 3 minutes informing us of whatever is on their minds related to county business. And seeing none, instead of our usual horde at the mic, we'll move on. We have a consent agenda. Do we need to remove anything from the consent calendar? Seeing none. Could I have a motion then on number 24-101 through 105 and 24-112?
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say
Can I
aye.
just ask a quick
Yeah.
question before the vote? Did you say 112 also?
Yes.
That was on the amended agenda. Okay, thank you.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And we have new business. Replacement vehicles for LE patrol operations. And also, that's 106, and then 107 includes another purchase. So, who's going to present this item?
Sheriff, are you here for the vehicles?
Yeah.
It's all yours.
Evening?
Good evening. So I'm pitch hitting tonight, but the captain is looking to purchase 6 vehicles out of general revenue, three of which are 2024s, leftovers. The other three are the 2025s. Also looking to buy 3 for Standish, on behalf of Standish, 1 on behalf of Gray, and then 1 for the SRO, who the town of Gray will pay 3/4 of it, and strike that. The Gray New Gloucester High School will pay 3/4 of it. The other quarter will be paid by the town of Gray. So we bill that off to them.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you. So could I have a motion, please, then on 24-101? No, I'm sorry, 24-106. We had quite a little go-around about vehicles last year, didn't we? I will make the motion for 106, just to get this matter on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Concepts, ideas? Mr. Gailey, I know we have your budget here on the agenda, and that'll be going through a process that ends in February with a vote at the commission. Do you remember?
So it ends in February for what?
The budget for next year.
The budget for next year, the budget that we're currently in goes until June 30th.
Right. And
So any of the vehicles in this bid that are coming out of the general fund are coming out of current year 24-25 budgeted dollars.
okay. Is there any 25, 26 money involved in any of these?
No.
Teresa, if you don't mind, as our finance director, or Alex or Jim, whoever, is this square with all the budgeting that we've done so far on items such as this?
Yes. And we receive replacement money for one of the totaled vehicles in Harpswell as well. That's included in one of these vehicles.
That's next on the agenda.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's a standalone next item.
Oh, okay, sorry. I
For a
thought it was
pickup truck.
I thought it was lumped in with that. So, yes.
I was wondering what an F-150 responder was. I assumed it was a pickup truck. Steve?
Yeah, I have a question, and I briefly talked to the manager about it, but should bring it out here. And my question was, why aren't all our vehicles bought out of a single pool and then it's part of the contract cost, et cetera? And I think that ought to get explained so that people know why communities buy a vehicle for themselves and it's just allotted just to them.
I can do that. So when we contract, I'll use Standish, they're buying 3. They have a contract of 7, soon to be 8. They've approved 8 cars, or 8 people, which requires 8 cars. So there's a rotation. So when the contract is negotiated, the captain goes up and talks about, okay, what do you want to change from last year? And generally, it doesn't change much, other than he lets them know, okay, you got a couple of cars that need to be replaced. Generally, he has a roundabout idea of what those are going to cost. Then he comes back and gets in touch with the business office, and they put together the finances. And then the captain goes out and sits down with them, and then they run it through their finance. So the reason Standish is locked in that they want a certain rotation, and they're willing to pay for it. That falls suit with Gray, also falls suit with Harpswell. I mean, we'll talk about the next agenda item, which is a Harpswell Marine Patrol. So depending on the use of the vehicle and what they want it for, sometimes they have input on that as well. Like, for instance, the pickup truck is for Marine Patrol, so that they can do Marine Patrol type stuff. Does that answer your question?
Well, yes and no.
So it comes out of the contract that the town votes on at town meeting to appropriate a certain sum, which is usually the total of the contract.
What I was trying to get at, Sheriff, was this. is that the town bears the capital cost of these and not the county.
Right, exactly.
That's, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Anything else? So, we have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. So, tell us about this F-150.
Yeah, so the second one, looks like it's a purchase of a leftover 150. The original one, which was fairly new, was totaled in a crash in July of this year in Brunswick. The deputy was responding to back up. A deputy on Harpswell, they were in Brunswick, and when he turned around and started to take off, an individual pulled in front of him. He T-boned the car. Luckily, nobody was seriously hurt, but it totaled the new pickup truck. So we received $42,000 for insurance costs. To obviously buy it, we had to come up with another $7,000. So the captain had $7,000 in his general revenue budget, or the budget for the sheriff's office is making up the difference to make the situation whole.
Any questions? Patty?
The truck that was totaled, what year was it?
It was either a 23 or a 24. It was like almost brand new.
So we typically don't have it insured to its full value. Is that common?
I don't deal with the insurance part of it, so I don't know.
Thank you
if
so
that's
much.
answered.
And this is the Harpswell, this
Yes.
is the car that is used in Harpswell, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay.
Harpswell owns it.
And they paid for it as part of the
Yeah.
contract?
They did.
Very good. Thank you.
A motion, please.
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Further discussion? I'll just say, we've had a prolonged discussion at times about the vehicle fleet and whether what we were doing made good sense. But frankly, when the participating, paying communities are trying to access law enforcement that we have available for them to access, they need vehicles, and they pay for it, it's kind of hard to tell them that that's not a good idea, so I'm going to support it. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Next item is 24-108, authorizing the county manager to submit payment to Oakview Group for the 23-24 management fee incentive at the Cross Arena.
Yes, thank you. This is an item that the commissioners and the Board of Trustees for the arena deals with annually. And that is because the management group that we have, Oakview Group, they have within a provision within their contract that based on a certain number of benchmarks that they could meet during a year, they will get an incentive at the end of that year. With the arena being as busy as it was the past fiscal year, 23-24, one would suspect that the incentive would be on the high side. Typically, the incentive is somewhere in the 80 to 90, high 90s range. This year, I'm bringing forth a request of $118,643 to be paid to Oakview Group for their 23-24 incentive. Just a piece of note information for the commissioners and a reminder that in the 23-24 year, the arena did quite a bit of business, and there was over a $700,000 profit turned for the arena, which was one of the highest in like the last 25 years. So a job well done by the staff of Oakview Group on behalf of the county at the arena last year, and they're right back at it again this year. So good things to come.
We have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. I'll just say, I wish they got twice as much money next year, so,
Don't say that.
why not? Any other discussion?
I would just make a comment. I think congratulations to the CIA arena manager and the entire staff. They've done a tremendous job these last couple of years bringing us back to profitability. As Jim said, it's only going to improve. So congratulations to everyone involved.
Yeah, for anyone that's listening from the general public, this is not an agreement that's packed with discretion. This is all part of the contract that is applied, basically mathematics. So, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Also under new business, we have 24-111, remand the 25-26 manager's proposed budget to the Finance Committee for further review and recommendation. Mr. Ganley?
Thank you. Usually I say with pleasure that I bring forward the manager's proposed budget each year at this time. However, this is a budget that neither I or staff are happy to bring forward to the county commissioners. This was a very difficult budget. There was a lot of fixed expenses that we could not control the increases of. We tried our best to offset some of those increases with a renewed look at the county's revenues across the board. But in the end, we found ourselves falling in line with a much higher needs from taxes percentage than we really wanted to bring forward to you today. It was a difficult one. We had a number of stresses in individual budgets. And I have about 16 slides here that I'd like to just bring the commissioners and the public through, explaining the impacts to this budget. The real impacts are in the nitty-gritty, as you know, and there will be plenty of time to go line by line through this budget and to see what's proposed. But I can give you a sneak peek in that there's not a lot of new initiatives and there's not a lot of special projects within this budget in any department being brought forward this year. So starting off, I always give you kind of a quick budget overview, kind of hit the high points of some of the areas that we touch upon each year. This budget includes a 3% COLA. That is a common number. I've seen higher throughout towns and counties in our area, but we feel is that 3% is the right number for us. Social Security is giving a 3.25% COLA for those on Social Security, just for additional information. Our health insurance increased to 11%. This is something that, as a Maine Municipal Employees Health Trust, their rates went up a median of 9%, and some fell under that 9% at 7%, and some fell above it at 11%. And our loss ratio was not on the good side of that 9%, and it was on the bad side, so we're experiencing an 11% increase in our health insurance. And that is for both our Plan C and our PPO 2500 plan. We do have 3 positions in this budget, and I'll talk a little bit more about those 3 positions in the coming slides. The bright spot of this entire budget is, for the first time, maybe ever, the county is now no longer in need of funding the tax anticipation note. The work that the commissioners did 2 years ago in transitioning us from a calendar year budget to a fiscal year budget has improved our cash flow, allowing us to wean ourselves off from the tax anticipation note. We've also been very fortunate, as you know, that the commissioners gave communities up to 5 years to pay off that 6-month budget, that transition budget that we had. Many communities have paid that in full. Many of the larger communities have paid that in full, which have really made us be able to accelerate our ability to get off the TAN. So there's the bright spot of the 25-26 budget. Capital, posing a $3.9 million bond. This is for 3 projects, and I'll touch upon it in the previous slides. Projects that have been pushed off to the side a couple of times now and we need to address. Our non-debt capital is actually decreased, and we're just under $300,000 on that. We are using our tax stabilization reserve of $200,000. The commissioners established that reserve about 4 years ago, and we're still able to use that reserve and wean ourselves off from that eventually. We have a game plan for that. And so our tax rate impact is being proposed at 7.74%. Some of the significant increases, like I made mentioned, we have 11% increase in health insurance. Workers' comp is up over $44,000. IT software subscriptions are a new thing. I think if everyone is familiar with Adobe Acrobat, a couple years back, they had shifted away from you buying the DVD out of Staples and you could run it as long as you wanted. Now they're pushing everyone into an annual subscription that you have to buy online and download. Well, they took their lumps and all the software companies were watching them take their lumps, and now all the software companies are doing what Adobe did 2 or 3 years ago. And so we are faced with a significant increase in software subscriptions because we no longer are able to sign 3-year or 5-year contracts with the software providers. We are now on a year-to-year basis. So over $140,000 of new money going in just that one line. This is the first year that the sheriff's office body cams and tasers are hitting the general fund. The last 2 years, and the first 2 years of the program, they were grant funded. And so we have to absorb over $66,000 for that program. Our risk pool is going up to 15%, or just under $50,000. The state of Maine has raised the rates for court-appointed attorneys in the probate office from $75 an hour to $150 an hour, which that doubles our line item for the probate court. The sheriff's office vehicles, they are up over $100,000 in new money, over and above what we funded this year for vehicles. We're seeing increased costs in vehicles, and we're seeing substantial increased costs in vehicle fit-up. And then we are proposing to reinstate 11 jobs at the jail. As the commissioners may remember, back in the 23-24 budget, because the jail budget was out of line with what we had for inmates at the jail and staffing at the jail, we opted to reduce the number of funded positions. We didn't cut the positions, we just unfunded them. We reduced the unfunded 48 positions at the jail to make budget. That was because we lost our federal inmate revenue, we lost a significant amount of state DOC revenue, and we were coming out of a budget that we had to plug $800,000 of fund balance into the budget to make the budget the previous year, which created a hole in the 23-24 budget. So those unfunded positions were brought forth. There was about 42 corrections officers, 3 sergeants, and some additional staff making up the 43. This year, we're proposing to bring 11 of them back, 9 corrections officers, 2 sergeants. Back when we reduced the population, we had an inmate population of about 220. Today, we have anywhere in the 360, 370, 380. So we've significantly increased our inmates, And federal inmates are back in the building, so the revenue is coming, and we have received a few $100,000 more in state aid. And so it is time to start building back some of those unfunded positions, and we're attempting to do that in this budget with these 11. The three proposed positions in the budget. The first is an admin trading assistant. This was first requested in last year's budget, which we're currently in today, but I cut it because there wasn't a clear plan for this position. However, over the last year, we have found with the acceleration of our recruiter and the HR staff through hiring of positions at the jail and at the sheriff's office, there is need of some capacity down on that campus to onboard, to maintain training for not only those new employees, but also the existing employees, both on the sheriff's patrol and also on the jail side of the house. The civil division is seeing a little bit of a shift in employees. We have a number of civil deputies that have or either will be retiring soon. We have a long-standing number of, I think, 3 per diem employees that deliver papers out into the rural areas of the county. The per diems, we've been trying for a number of years to transfer into part-time positions and to eliminate per diems because they do not meet the federal labor standards for how they're operating. In this budget, we're doing just that. And so we are also experiencing a significant amount of new papers needing to be delivered. I think if the sheriff was here, he would tell you that he's been out delivering. He's had other command staff and patrol staff delivering. There is a significant backlog because of the increased workload within the civil division. With that, we have offset this position request through an increase in the revenue side of the civil division to offset any new general fund tax rate money going into this position. The last position is a fire EMS coordinator's position, and this is a position that has grown in conversation out of work with town managers and fire chiefs over the last year and a half, 2 years, about how we can work collaboratively in the fire service. Travis has done a wonderful job in really spearheading that discussion with those the managers and chiefs. There has been a report that has been published outlining a number of recommendations. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a number of managers and chiefs participate in a facilitated strategic planning process around how the region can better collaborate in the fire EMS. And coming from that strategic planning effort, the number one recommendation was to bring on a fire EMS coordinator that could be there to spearhead and initiate trainings of Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2 candidates, could offer EMT trainings, just that regional point person that would allow and get things off from the fire chief's desk and allow the fire chiefs to let this person run with it and offset their workload. The person would also look at whether there was any collaborative purchasing agreements that could be done on turnout gear, hose, other equipment fire departments purchase throughout the year, and there'd also be one to look at medical directors. A lot of the departments have a common medical director amongst them, but not the same person everywhere. So, and if that person goes, there's really no backup plan. This position is largely modeled after the fire EMS coordinator that the York County office has, and it is turned out to be a very beneficial service provided to the towns of York County, and we're hoping to emulate that here in Cumberland County. So those are the three positions that we are proposing. One thing I did not make mention is the admin training assistant would be a half-year hire to offset the full impact of the position on the budget. It would be a January 2026 hire, not a July 1st hire, much like the fire EMS coordinator and the civil deputy position.
Can I ask a question on that one,
Sure.
on that hire? Will that be a county hire, or would that be a sheriff's office hire?
That would be a sheriff's office hire.
Very well, thank you.
Welcome.
Which hire are we talking about again?
That would be the admin training coordinator.
Okay.
Other impacts, actually, this is a pretty duplicate slide, so I can.
Steve,
today.
let me help comment on your fire chief there. This is a great position, having attended those meetings, mainly because the OSHA laws are coming down, and what most communities haven't, I don't think, haven't really planned for was when they hit, essentially is going to do away with the volunteer firemen. Certification that's going to be required, the training that's got to occur, et cetera, that's all got to come forth. But time's growing short, and when that hits, there's going to be a plethora of work.
Maybe I could throw my half cent in. I'm going to wonder about how the supervision is going to work through the sheriff's office, and I wonder already how the structure exists in York County, where it apparently has been successful. And I don't need any answers on any of that today, but that'll be something to think about.
Are you referring to the fire EMS coordinator being under the sheriff's office?
Right.
That is not the case. The question that was asked was the admin training coordinator.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The fire EMS coordinator would start off, the proposal would be to start it off in the executive office and let it grow from there, much like we did the public health department.
That makes a lot more sense to me. All right, yeah, no, I kind of assumed the other one would be the sheriff's office issue, sure.
This slide just gives a little bit more detail in terms of our proposal for the reinstatement of funding for 9 corrections officers, 2 sergeants. I've gone through this. Don't need to belabor the point. Talked about revenue adjustments. These are some of the larger revenue adjustments that we were able to pull off. Our monthly parking, one, the commissioners have approved already. That happened, I believe, in October, for rates to change come January 1st in the garage. The second impact to allow us to raise the revenue is that hopefully in the first 4 months of 2025, about 40 to 45 employees will be moving out of this building and moving into a new building, which will free up parking spaces within the garage, and we will be able to backfill those by selling them either by monthly or hourly rates. And so we're seeing a $100,000 increase in that. That's our estimation. Like I said, the civil division, we're proposing $140,000 in new revenue there. We're giving an estimation of federal borders. Right now, the budget has just over $1.7 million budgeted. We're proposing to bring that up to just around $2.3 million, based on what we're seeing on federal borders at this time. Communications contracts are up just under $82,000. Probate fees are up $75,000 to hopefully offset the $75,000 expense that we saw come as a mandate from the state of Maine. And then district attorney's fees are up $20,000. So getting into the granular numbers for the next number of slides, total expenditures through these categories, and just to familiarize the commissioners and the public again, we have three budgets that get blended all together. The county expenses, which is the general fund budget, the jail expenses, which is the jail budget, and then the cross-insurance arena. The county general fund budget is up over $2.2 million. Jail is up over $2.1 million. And the cross-insurance arena is down $54,000. But total expenditures equaling $4.3 million, or a 6.22% increase. Getting a little bit granular in the jail budget, we have jail revenues, new revenues, with state funding and federal border leading the way with $902,000 there. Our expenses are up $2.1 million, which is a needs from taxes for the jail operation of just over $1.2 million, or 8%. I will bring notice to that 8%, because that 8% exceeds state statute of 4%. We have nowhere to go, and we got to have the dialogue about this. Yes, Steve?
By vote of the commission, you can exceed it. The past legislation that went in specifically says that, so you're right, we need to have a dialogue.
Yep. We swallowed hard when we did that number, but we had nowhere else to go with it.
Well, let me be a little more helpful here, I think. Just because of the things I'm participating in, the jail budgets in the state have not had an increase as they should from, I believe, from the state for 2 years. They've been flat funded. And that means that the counties have had to absorb county state mandate costs, which is not correct. And hopefully this year, through legislation, we'll be able to address that. But that's a battle that's ongoing now, and we're going to need to really pull ourselves together and be a force when it comes to fruition.
Jumping over the cross-insurance arena, we're seeing just over $19,000 reduction in the principal and interest bond, just over $67,000 in prior debt bonding, and operational costs of $32,000 increase. For netting it all out, a total dollar change of negative $54,291, or negative 1.69%. So bringing all those three budgets together, we're looking at just over $3 million needs from taxes, or 7.74%. Outside agency contributions, these are pretty standard contributions that we give annually to these five. Extension service coming in at $125,000. For full disclosure, they asked for $130,000, and I'm proposing $125,000. Thrive 2027 is the standard $100,000 grant. Soil and water is the standard $18,000. Public library, the same, standard $10,000. And Tedford House, we contribute $15,000 for $268,000, which is the same as the current year. Our debt, capital, and tax anticipation note, because we are proposing a $3.9 million general obligation bond, we are seeing an increase in the principal and interest slightly. It's not that full dollar change, but it is a portion of that full dollar change. Capital reserves, like I made mention, the non-debt CIP portion of the house, we're down $77,000, and our tax anticipation note is down $81,000. Yielding it, and that is a wrong number on the tax anticipation note. That 121 should be 81,000. Yielding it to a $135,594 in this category. Talking about the capital general obligation bond, once again, I think we propose this every 2 years, we need to do the jail roof. And every time we have this under the general obligation bond, we have something more dire that comes up. And last summer, when we did a general obligation bond, we had the jail roof in there, and we also had the door locking system at the jail. And the door locking system came in a significant amount higher than what we originally had under that general obligation bond, and so we needed to cancel the jail roof to fund the locking system, as we felt as though the locking system was a little bit more important than the jail roof at the time being. So once again, we are putting in the jail roof at $2.5 million. We've just been very fortunate. I think this might have been the third or fourth time I've put this in the budget over my 8 years here. Been very fortunate that the roof hasn't plagued any problems for us. But we do need to do it because it's at its end of lifespan. Second item is garage renovations. This is a project that came from a full assessment by an independent contractor 2 or 3 years ago. Gave us a game plan on what we needed to do in that garage and what time frame was. We are in the garage this year, looking to wrap up the first phase of the project in December. This would be to fund the second phase of the project, to continue to preserve that garage and not lose it completely. And so that would be a project that would be started, if not next summer, the following spring. And then the courthouse windows. This room is one of it's this side of the building that we're proposing. I think the commissioners have been in here often during the winter time and have felt the debris blowing through these windows. They're very inefficient. They are plaguing problems for us throughout the work areas of the state side of the courthouse. It is an item that when we negotiated with the state about 3 years ago on a new contract for this lease space, there were 2 demands for capital improvements. The first was a new HVAC system and controls, which we are currently undergoing, and the commissioners have approved the contract for that to take place. The second were these windows, and through the monthly contribution that the state gives, they're giving a portion of the bonding of these 2 improvements. So they're sharing the cost of the HVAC and the windows. But this general obligation bond has $800,000 for this side of the building's windows. We will have to come back for the other side at a later date. I thought this was interesting in the sense that I thought I'd give us a little bit of history over the last couple of years on where our tax rate has fallen. These aren't tax rates that get sent off to individual towns, because individual towns is based on their share of the countywide assessment, but this is where our budget has landed since 2018. As you can see, it's not a norm that we're up in the 7%, and so there are other contributing factors to get us there. We're typically in that 4% range, and to propose a budget this at over 7%, it was concerning for all of us. And so with that said, that concludes my budget presentation for the 25-26. I do have paper packets if anyone is interested in paper budgets. At this time, I will tell you and remind you that the Finance Committee actually meets tomorrow night at 5 o'clock in this room. Hopefully you remand the budget to them this evening, but their budget process will be the same slide deck, and they'll talk about what departments they want to bring in, and what type of meeting schedule they want to live by over the next couple of months. My ultimate goal is to possibly bring back a budget mid to late February, if we could have a second meeting of February, so that we can notify the towns a little bit earlier this year than we did last year. This past March, I think it was March 19th, that we approved the budget. And towns start clamoring around the last week of February and looking for a number so they can bake it into their budget. We learned some timing in our first year, and so we're hoping to help out the towns this year and get this all wrapped up by mid to late February. So with that, I'd ask for any questions, or if not, to remand the 25-26 budget to the Finance Committee for further review and recommendation. Thank you.
So first, any questions? Thanks for the presentation, by the way, very comprehensive. Steve?
Yeah, it's a great presentation. But one of the things I ask is the same as I made a remark last meeting. Are there any departments that can be transformed or transferred from tax base to fee base? And if there are, can we start to work on that? It would seem to me that there's maybe a couple that we've got. One of them is the garage, because we get funds coming in that way. And the other is, I think we should look at our dispatch center. That's a way that we can get some potential funding from that. And if you look at what's charged for fees, phone fees now, this state is about the lowest in the United States. And so to get funding to help with the dispatch center and its costs is another way to look at it. But what I'm looking for, are there other departments that we might be able to do some shifting like that to take the impact off the property tax? It's rhetorical.
That merits a jotting down of a note. Other than that,
I got one other.
Go ahead.
And then could we have Deeds come in and make a presentation on what they are planning or trying to put forth for fees for the ensuing year?
Is that a presentation to the Finance Committee?
No, Deeds.
You're referring to the Register of Deeds are putting in a fee increase through state statute this session, right?
Right.
Okay.
Patty?
My only comment, thank you for putting all this together, and it is really tough to see the increase, particularly with the several years that we had a fairly low contribution percentage. And it's weird, I was just saying the last meeting, the garage, it needs our attention, we need to make sure the garage is good to go, but I guess the question is, sometimes I've seen things get kicked down, the can gets kicked down the road, because it seems like such a difficult budget cycle. It's gonna be tough on the towns. Is there any way we can regroup and look at either another financial model or, pushing something a little bit further out to another budget cycle and without, again, I don't want safety to be an issue if we feel like the roof's gonna fall in on someone's head. That's different, but is there any way to delay the $800,000, which is part of the garage? Phase 2, is that right? Is it 800,000, phase 2?
I think that's like 663,000.
Okay, I couldn't remember what the slide said.
800,000 was for the windows.
Right, yeah, no, so it's the 600 for the garage. Just putting it out there as food for thought. I don't know. Again, I don't want to create an unsafe environment, but I also want to be really sensitive to that budget number that we just all saw.
One of the things I'll just make mention to is under the general obligation bond, if we took the garage out, it's not an immediate savings of 663,000
Right.
because it's really a small fraction of the principal and interest first year of the general obligation bond. So we might save $12,000, $14,000. Is that a good
Is
spitball?
That it? Okay.
that a 30-year bond?
It depends on the life cycle of the improvements. These windows would probably be a 30-year bond. The garage is probably a 20-year.
Okay,
We're a little
Jail roof would be
behind on the
30.
garage.
okay.
We need to catch up on the
Yeah,
garage.
okay.
Yeah.
Strike the comment. I thought it would be a good try, thank you.
It's always good to ask. Anybody else?
I would just say, thank you to Jim and the entire executive staff. Very challenging budget year. In the 13 years I've been here, this has certainly been the most challenging budget cycle, and will continue to be this the rest of this year and into the vote. But if there's a way to squeeze a budget, you know how, and you've done a great job trying to bring it in, rein it in as much as possible. So thanks for those efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's always been my impression that we're in a 5 or 6 year boomerang cycle anyway that started with COVID. So, there's going to be an economic change in the next couple of years. We'll see how it all goes, but I'm not surprised that the 1% increase that we had in the middle of COVID now becomes almost an 8% increase now. You can push things as far as you want to push them, but eventually they come back to see you. So, with that said, any other comments? Or I'll entertain a motion on this item to refer this to the Finance Committee.
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, Steve Gordon. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And that more or less concludes our business. We want to hear from the staff about all their doings. We'll start down there with a man we haven't seen for a while. Glad to see him again. Travis, how are you, and what's going on?
I had mostly planned to talk about the fire and EMS strategic session that we held earlier this month. I think Jim did a great job summarizing where we're at now. I'd be happy to put together a longer presentation maybe for the December meeting, but the short version is that we had attendance of a little more than 30 people, some county staff, a lot of managers and chiefs. With the support of our facilitator, we honed in on 3 major categories of work that we want to take into the next year as we sort of develop what the county's full-time commitment to this work will be. One was data aggregation and study. The second was, as Jim mentioned, actually this would be probably the first one because of how popular it was, regional training, finding ways to create regional training support for firefighter and EMTs so they can very quickly be processed and put to work across the county. And then the third was kind of a grab bag of other coordinating services that we can help them with, if not provide for them. Commissioner Gordon talked about OSHA regulations. We talked about policymaking in general. That's a category that includes what are things we can and should be doing together, whether it's just coordinated by the county or a service provided by the county. These are things that will change and grow, but the short-term plan is to form focus groups with these folks from the towns so they stay engaged and continue to participate in moving these things ahead, and they're bought in on whatever next steps that we take from the county's perspective. One other thing I'll mention, very quickly, we have a new legislature to be sworn in a few weeks. There are still some recounts to be settled, including in Cumberland County. Great news for us. On the House side, it appears the Democrats will remain in the majority. Their leadership slate are the majority leader and, in the Senate side, their Senate President, Senate Majority Leader, and Whip are all from Cumberland County. On the House side, their majority leaders from Cumberland County, and the Speaker's from York County. He's somebody we've worked with a lot. We do a lot of collaboration with York County specifically on policy stuff. So we have a great mix. We don't know the committees yet. We don't know when cloture will be. But we have a great mix of leadership who are familiar with us specifically, and they're people who we've worked with before. Great opportunities heading into 2025 to make some hay in policy making. In particular, some of the things that we've already started to talk about with the fire service coordinator folks.
We have already had a few mumbles about bills that we think, despite their languid opportunities for passage, should probably be put in the hopper before the
Yeah,
deadline.
and I'm starting to talk with Liz in public health, who has some ideas, and certainly, say it every year, as this board is thinking about our priorities, I would love to have individual or group conversations with anybody about what we want to prioritize from Cumberland County to walk in there. Obviously, Commissioner Gordon still chairs the statewide county commissioners policy group where a lot of the county policy work gets done. But we have our own needs, so I'm happy to stay engaged with all of you on that.
Thank you. Amy, how's life in the HR world?
Well, it's busy. We started negotiations with the correction officer union in October. We'll be discussing that later in executive session. We began negotiations on Monday with the dispatchers. Their agreement expires at the end of this year, so we're a little late starting with them. And then we're currently preparing for 2 additional negotiations that'll begin after the first of the year, and that's with the Teamsters Jail Supervision and Teamsters Patrol. So it's going to be a pretty active year for labor agreements. We are seeing a surge in correction officer applications, which is fantastic. This is usually the quarter of the year that we have seen it for the last couple of years where people apply for, this is where we get the big numbers. So we hired 3 on 11/4, we hired 5 more today. We anticipate in December hiring an additional 10 more. So we could have about 20 more correction officers, which would be great. Again, you have the attrition that's built in there, but I'm only giving the positive numbers at this point.
It is, after all, the holiday season.
Yes, exactly, and that's, try to do that every once in a while. We are working with finance to finalize the language and information going out for the paid family medical leave. We have to start communicating that at the beginning of December, putting the posters out, sending a letter to employees, informing them. The final rules aren't done yet, so we anticipate a whole bunch of calls where we say, we don't know yet. So, but we're working on that too, so that should be going out this week.
Right.
So let me understand, we've got to inform everybody about a program for which we don't know what the rules.
Well, the money
The
starts being
money's-
taken out of their check in January
January
1st.
1st.
So you have to at least inform them why that extra money is coming out, but the rules aren't finalized yet. Yes, exactly. I'm hoping
That's
to get.
2026.
Yes,
Maybe.
it doesn't go into effect, yes, until then, possibly, January
I was
2026.
just trying to make.
No, I know, and I have a standard kind of bullets that I've given everybody in the department on how to answer it when they all call to say details, so that we just don't have them yet.
Teresa, the news from finance, anything?
There's a lot going on in finance as well. A lot of the time with the budget was being done. There's a lot of time being devoted right now to the new payroll system to eliminate manual process. It's really thoughtful. The new payroll software that we're going to is very elaborate and laid out very well, going through. They've got 16 tabs of sheets for Excel going through and asking questions, so I'm really excited that they seem really great building the software going through. Aaron has been sitting in all of those calls with me from IT, and so it's been a great collaboration there. Taken up a lot of time, but I think that the effort put forward to build this right is going to really pay off in the end. We're taking in mind and hoping to work with a scheduling software. So we're being very mindful of the scheduling of the jail patrol and communications to build that in and feed schedules to stop having, right now, the different places, they actually are putting it into the payroll, and we don't want them doing that. We want them putting schedules in and then having the schedules feeding into the software. So as we're building this, it's on a much bigger scale that we're planning and doing to make sure we can import and export correctly in the way we want it done. I'm working with Municipay now, so we can finish passing on some credit card fees that are in deeds specifically, so those get passed along and the customers that are using the credit cards pay those fees. I've been working with Machias Savings on a new credit card purchasing program for the county, so receipts can be uploaded easier, hopefully maneuverability, tracking, tracing, and fees. There are no interest fees on this because we pay it automatically, so I'm just gonna have to have a heavy stick to go after those people with because there's no interest to go after. But Jim's assured me he'll back me on that heavy stick. Been working with TD on restructuring fees and interest to get some more interest on our accounts. So we're gonna pay some of the fees up front for more interest. So that seems like that was gonna be more feasible. Going to a conference with the Maine Paid Family Leave. They're currently working with Munis so they can write some of the programming for the deductions. They're supposed to have the website link out that everybody needs to sign up for on, I went on Halloween and they said by mid-November, keep your eye out for this. And so I've been keeping my eye out and that link has not been there to sign up yet. And so that's really a bulk of my time in the last few weeks has been spent.
Thank you. Alex, our deputy manager, what do we have?
So fingers crossed for Wednesday at the jail medical facility. That's the point at which the concrete for the roof goes in. They are really increasingly feeling up against it to get that place closed off before winter conditions kick in, but they're on pace. So Wednesday will be the big concrete pour, which worries me a little bit because it's supposed to start pouring rain 24 hours later, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. But they're cruising right along, and it looks very different every visit you get out there. It is now very clearly the medical facility. You can see the walls up and all of the work on that. 27 Northport also fully under construction at this point in time. Studs are in for all the walls. Demo is done. HVAC up on the 3rd floor. It's astonishingly noisy in there right now as they're clanging away on everything. But we're cruising right along on that one. And my final 2 points, just the good and the bad. Can't state enough how excited and positive these fire EMS meetings have gone. It's really a remarkable sea change to see, having been here for a while, to see these folks actually so excited about this. And then on the flip side, yeah, the budget. Sorry, y'all, it's just brutal. We're doing what we can. Yep.
Jim?
I have one item, I had a couple, but I've made mention to it throughout the night. So one item I have not made mention to is we are looking for members for the Board of Assessment Review. We were lucky that Jeff Crane was on the agenda this evening, so that brings us up to 4 members. We have a tricky situation right now in that we have an application in the office that we need to hear within 60 days of receiving the application. It's an appeal application out of Casco. The law firm that one of our board members works at is handling the appeal, so he needs to excuse himself. So at this point, we do not have a quorum to hear this application. So we are moving diligently on trying to get members signed up to this committee, and hopefully in December we can have another 1 or 2 on there. We did do, we saw this coming, and we did paper advertisements in the forecaster that all 5 regions or 4 regions that they cover during the months of August, September, and the 1st of October. We got 1 out of it. So I just want to get the word out as much as possible that we need members for the Board of Assessment Review. There's a criteria to sit on that board. You either have to be an attorney or you have to be a licensed real estate agent in the state of Maine. That's the threshold for qualifying for that board. So hopefully in the next 30 days, we can make some movement in getting more people on that board. Lastly,
Question on that?
yeah.
The question I've had when I've talked to a couple of people to see if they have interest is, how often do they meet?
I'll put it this way. They haven't met in 2.5 years. And when I contacted all the members, they were all still engaged, so, but it's typically a meeting schedule. If they do meet, it's between November of a year and March, 1st of April. And a lot of times what we see is that they tend to be from communities that have just gone through a reval. And so hence Casco just went through a reval, and so we've got our first, and we anticipate a couple more possibly. We'll see.
Are
So-
there meetings virtually, or are they in person?
They're in person,
And they're held at,
right here.
okay.
Last item, and Alex didn't mention this, but one of the positive notes of 27 Northport is that we've picked out all the colors needed for that building. And you just don't know the number of colors you need to pick for a 32,000 square foot building until you start picking out desks, 10 different types of chairs, walls, carpet. It's been a complete nightmare, and to have Alex and I spearheading that, we're all in trouble on colors, so. But it's all done in our eyes, so that's a good thing. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can't wait.
Hope you didn't overlook orange.
There is some orange.
How ironic you would
burnt,
mention
is it?
that particular color.
It's burnt orange. I'm gonna take one.
So, Commissioners, Commissioner Witonis
I don't have anything, I'm all set.
and Commissioner Jameson.
Just a couple comments. Want to congratulate the Scarborough boys cross country for winning the state championship a couple weeks ago, and all the competitors out there for having a successful season. And I would just like to wish all the families out there a happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully you can enjoy some time off with your family members and relax and enjoy the time of peace and relaxation in a very nice family environment. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
Just a public congratulations to the commissioner-elects who are here tonight reviewing this meeting, and look forward to working with both of you, and happy that we have folks who are qualified to serve and excited to join the team. So thank you so much, and congratulations.
Commissioner Gordon?
Well, I'd like to echo what Neil indicated. It's Thanksgiving time, and it's time to bring the family together and sit down and talk and find out what's going on for the year, how you can help one another, or just enjoy the company. Please do that. Thank you.
I have a couple of things I want to mention. First, with
No, I passed.
I agree with quite often Commissioner Gordon that expresses dislike of the current jail funding situation. If you paid any attention to Manager Gailey's rendition of our current budget woes, a substantial portion of that was related to the jail operations, and of course, even with the increase in funding that we're able to achieve through the federal contract and in other ways, we are in a situation where the income from the state is basically unavailing to address the ongoing and increasing responsibilities that we have for people in the jail and administering that system as part of the criminal justice system. And I have zero hope that we're actually going to have an assembly of 16 counties represented in some meeting where anybody is going to decide that that's a huge financial responsibility that needs to be tackled immediately. So, you know, I don't doubt that the work that Jim and Alex and Teresa have already done on this budget was intensive, and the results, I think, underline the long-standing over-reliance by Maine government on property tax, and that's probably going to happen again. And usually we're able to hold things around 4%, or sometimes even a little less, but I think I've already mentioned that I think we were in a wave cycle here where we were quite low a few years ago, and now we're catching up in a couple of ways, and we'll probably regress to the mean, as they say, in the economics world, and be back at lower percentage changes in years to come. But like I say, at a time when the state was stocking heavily the rainy day fund, to the extent that what they wanted to put in there in the last couple of years was illegally too much, because the balance was so high. You know, some very serious items got deferred, and I think we have, if I remember the budgets from years past, we're actually getting less now than we did before. I think the last time I knew the number, the state would pay us $25 a day for inmate room and board, if we're going to call it that over there. But just by comparison, the feds, we negotiated with them, and they're paying $150 a day, and that spread is substantial, and it affects what we have to do here. And it also, frankly, is someone who believes a lot in the prospect that regional government could improve public services and reduce the actual cost over time of needed public services. It causes things to be deferred that would otherwise probably be a little closer to the front burner. So that having been said, I too actually would like to again mention, both for Neil Jameson and Susan Watonis, that we are now desperately leaning towards the final meeting of the commission for them to serve after, I think, at least a dozen years on in each behalf. I think Commissioner Watonis was a little more than that, and so their service has been exemplary. And they've done, they've participated in making a lot of changes that have occurred with county government, and virtually all of them, in my view, positive. So their public service comes to an end not because they've worn out their welcome, but because the charter for the county, which was passed 12 or 14 years ago, says that 3 strikes and you're out, and they probably going to wait 3 years and come back, so and that would be fine.
Thank you, Chip.
Yeah,
Thank you,
no,
Jim.
it's well deserved, and we'll try to have a cookie or something next month for you to. Congratulations for your years of work, and. I do kind of remember that Neil on the Civic Center, and Sue always with the Lakes Region issues, and also on the Civic Center, if I remember right.
Still there.
You know, it's that was significant service. It went from an albatross to something much better, and so. Nothing wrong with that. The other thing is, I want to welcome our newest members. We're going to put them right to work, and I'm sure they'll appreciate that. And then And of course, I wish everybody a good Thanksgiving, and looking forward to the, to the holiday season, the lights, and that's it. Anything further from anyone? In that case, I will entertain a motion. We don't adjourn yet, do we? Because we're gonna go
To
into.
go into
exec-
executive
we're gonna-
session.
We're gonna go into executive session next, right?
Yes, we're going into executive session, but for those at home, there won't be any motions or votes taken once the commissioners come out of executive session. You'll just be adjourning.
This means that our recording of these grand undertakings will end right now.
And we need a motion to go into executive session under 1 MRSA 4056D and 405, actually, both of them are 6D.
Can I have that motion, please?
So
Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So we are in executive session. And I will say,